Will the House come to order? Representative Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me clarify what just took place. 55 hours of testimony from the public was seen by the public. 11 hours of debating that testimony of those 5 days was not seen by the public. I don't know why, and that's all I'm going to say. I don't know why, but it wasn't shown to the public. What we thought about what they thought for 5 days, we gave them zero airtime. I don't know why that's the case. May I proceed with point 2 of why I stood in rebuttal to the gentleman from Pearl City?
Yes, please proceed.
Point 2 is as follows, and this is for the record. The committee report is supposed to be reflective of the testimony that we heard. The committee report is very, very conspicuous in its absence.
A point of order. Whenever you speak, you should be speaking to the speaker. He's not the speaker yet.
But I love looking at you. Speaker, you're so good looking, so mature. My eyes just naturally go to you.
Speaker's correct.
Except sitting behind you is the chair of the
judiciary.
House
rules, Representative Ward, you've got to be facing the speaker.
Okay, realignment.
Maybe you can kind of glance at him, but look at me.
Okay, I got you. You're in my crosshairs now. The point is this. Where that committee report is absent in the voluminous references, and I'm going to use the Eva Beach colloquial curriculum, the Dick and Jane, the countless questions that he asked, to the point where people were laughing. There was nothing at all in the committee report about what this amendment is about in terms of curriculum.
Mr. Speaker, I yield my time.
Yes, Representative Fukumoto, thank you very much.
And the notion that, as I called them, the mama bears, that the women of Hawaii wanted to be concerned about their children. Nothing in the committee report does that. And Judge Levinson said, these are the things that are tertiary in a court case. First you take what the bill says, then you take, it's secondary. The secondary evidence is what the committee report says, and then tertiary is what we small guys on the floor have to say about it. Therefore, I would suggest if we really want to represent what the people of Hawaii said for 5 days on TV, we have to mention in that committee report that some parents are concerned about this issue, which it looks as though people may be voting down. So, Speaker, let's be honest. Let's let the record reflect, other than very few people will probably go and look at the 6 or 8 inch record of the Journal to find out what was said. So let it be on the record that all of the things that this amendment is about is conspicuously absent in the official committee report. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Fale.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of the amendment.
Please proceed.
I actually refer to the good representative from Wahiwa's remarks in regards to the amendment. He has demonstrated that even this amendment has issues with it, Mr. Speaker, and that underlines the problems that we have when we rush legislation. And given the short amount of time that we were allowed to respond to this measure was introduced on the 22nd of October. Special session started on the 28th. Mr. Speaker, we were supposed to go and talk to experts. We were supposed to talk to the related government agencies in regards to this issue. I tried to get a hold of them. I believe that was a Wednesday. Have you ever tried to get an appointment within a day or two of any of these departments, the Department of Health, Department of Education, all these? Mr. Speaker, it takes more than 6 days to get a sit-down. Mr. Speaker, it takes more than 6 days for people to clear their schedule, and that's including a weekend. That's including a weekend. Special session started on Monday.
Representative Fale, please continue, but let's focus on the floor amendment number 15 before us.
So this floor amendment, Mr. Speaker, is an attempt to do what we were not allowed to do and address a number of the issues that were raised with the House draft that came out of that hearing. Because, remember, Mr. Speaker, not a single person in this body, before they voted on this measure, was allowed to go back to their community and say, what do you think of the amendments that the House made? We sat here while those amendments were the committee report wasn't even complete at 10 o'clock when we came into session on Wednesday. So again, not a single representative in this building had the opportunity to take this measure to the community to get feedback on it. And so we have before us a river of amendments to deal with the 55 hours of concerns that were raised. So, Mr. Speaker, not a single amendment from this body as a whole has been made. And so, Mr. Speaker, at least this amendment tries to deal with one of the issues that has been raised. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Representative. Representative Saiki.
Mr. Speaker, I call for the question.
Question
Please allow members to submit written comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Question has been called. Members, if you would like to submit written comments into the journal, either in support or in opposition of the floor amendment, Chair will allow you to do so. Members, we're going to take a voice vote. If you vote aye, you're in favor of the floor amendment. If you vote no, you oppose the floor amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed say no. The floor amendment has failed. Representative Ward.
Mr. Speaker, I have an additional floor amendment.
Mr. Clerk, have copies of floor amendment number 16 been distributed to the members?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, copies of floor amendment number 16 have been distributed.
Thank you very much. Representative Ward, for the motion.
Mr. Speaker, I move for the adoption of the floor amendment that exempts small businesses and people of conscience.
Thank you very much. Representative McDermott.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
Thank you very much. Any discussion on proposed floor amendment number 16, Representative Ward?
Speaker, I rise in support of the amendment.
In support, please proceed.
Speaker, if we remember the concern about church protections and then children protections, the third is probably the most forgotten member of the faith community. That's the small business person, the individual of conscience. This amendment speaks directly to them by allowing their genuinely felt religious beliefs to exempt them from doing things which otherwise are against their religion. Speaker, I said earlier, half of my relatives are Muslims. If this bill said from now on it's okay to eat pork, or you should eat pork, I mean, we can pass the law, but the conscience of these individuals will be seared. It will be where the state now becomes the church religion. It'll be where the sanction of the church will rest with the state. Mr. Speaker, I know that this is unprecedented, but look, this is Hawaii. We can do better than those other 15 states. They never give this the way. And I have in my district empirical evidence, again, the empirical term, a bed and breakfast who has this very issue tied up in court. You know how much it costs to go to court to fight these issues or to settle these issues, to adjudicate these issues? Mr. Speaker, some of the churches, some of the small businesses, some of these cake makers and florists and photographers, they're going to be hurting. Why can we not consider them? That's what this amendment appeals to. And for those who are genuinely members with a faith community that, in their conscience, you know, we have conscientious objectors from one faith community. They don't have to go into the military. We have people in the military that can't fire weapons, etc. We as Americans have always allowed your conscience to be very important. And not as a way of putting it onto the equality issue, but to genuinely acknowledge that this is one nation under God. This is where 80% of the people believe in God. And there's probably a number of people who believe in God sincerely enough to get out of the business, which they've done already on the mainland. Speaker, we can do better. This is an amendment that will help and give those members of the faith community with conscience to do their work at the same time, keep their duty to God and their country. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative
Mr.
McDermott.
I yield to Representative Rhodes.
Okay, Representative Rhodes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. You know, having listened to all the testimony over the last week and a half,
Representative Rhodes, in support or in opposition
against the floor amendment.
Please proceed.
Sorry. You know, I think people are forgetting. There may be some people who are forgetting that the public accommodations law is specifically designed to protect those of religious belief. If you look at the list of protected classes, you have race, sex, sexual orientation, color, ancestry, disability, and religion. And religion obviously is of it's a choice. You know, you get to choose your own religion. It's not something that you're born with that you can't do anything about. You know, it makes you wonder why religion is on the list. Well, the reason religion is on the list is because people with minority religious views have been persecuted and discriminated against for time immemorial. I think ever since there's been religion, there's been discrimination against religious people. And I don't think it's a good idea to erode the protections in the public accommodations law for religious people, and that's why I oppose this floor amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative McDermott.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Mr. Speaker, religious protections are guaranteed to us by the First Amendment. So important that our founding fathers put them in there because they came from all parts of the world.
Representative McDermott, in support.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Please proceed, no problem.
All parts of the world to escape the tyranny of religious persecution. It was so important that it's our First Amendment, freedom of press, speech, religion. It's so important it was enshrined in that document. Now what we're doing is creating a new civil right. Now, as Justice Levinson testified before the committee, there is no constitutional right to same-sex marriage. As Justice Levinson testified, there is no fundamental right. But we believe we should create this new right. What's going to happen invariably, and with all the legal scholars have said, you are going to have a constant conflict between these two rights. I go back to our friend, the photographer, Mr. Rocco from the Leeward Coast. He loves his homosexual brothers and sisters. Right now, when he gets called to play for a wedding, he makes his living as a piano player. He gets a phone call. He's very nice. He says, you know, I'm a devout Catholic. My family's been Catholic for 400 years. I appreciate what you're doing. Let me refer you to 3 or 4 folks who will do a fantastic job and probably do an even better job because, quite honestly, my heart is not in it. If someone goes out to target him because they know who he is and he doesn't do the wedding, he'll be subject to a lawsuit. At which point, a man of modest means cannot fight all the way to the United States Supreme Court. He would need some help. And he would go through years and years of litigation. And without this protection, he would be subject, I'm sure if the pattern falls, it has in other states, to harassment. He would be smeared on the web. Don't go to this photographer, hater, bigot, homophobe, ignorant. That's what it would say. It would be a web attack. And people would steer away from that because they don't want the controversy associated with that. So, Mr. Speaker, we'll put him out of business. It's not the first time we've put anyone out of business, but we'll put him out of business because we are saying this newly created civil right is more important than the First Amendment that was guaranteed to him in the United States Constitution. We are denying our faith tradition of this country. Religious freedom is so precious, Mr. Speaker. It's so precious they put it in there as the First Amendment. You cannot deny it as the heritage of our country. Maryland, how did they get their name? Maryland. That's where all the Catholics went. Pennsylvania, founded by William Penn, the Quakers, most tolerant of all the early faiths, and they had initially the largest Jewish community in the nation because of their tolerance. And I could go on and on and on. The Anglican Church in Virginia, that was a state religion. Thomas Jefferson didn't support that because they actually taxed their people to support the church. And that's where the separation of church and state came in. But each of these states had their own religion. So to deny that religion is a part of our fabric and who we are as a people is to deny reality. Now, without protections, we come against the conflict of a sincerely held religious belief and this new civil right. This new civil right seeks, quote unquote, equality, and it seeks legitimization, which is don't ask, don't tell, marriage, but it's still not there. They need destigmatization. And the only way you can get that is through shutting down people who disagree, calling people haters, bigots. And putting in the schools. That's the only way. They're not going to get my generation. They're not going to get the other generations who are older than me. But it's my kids in school. So, Mr. Speaker, we need to protect the business guys because they'll be shut down. They won't be. This is like telling Cedars-Sinai Hospital in Los Angeles they have to serve a BLT sandwich in their cafeteria. I mean, that's the equivalent, Mr. Speaker. A Jewish hospital, you got to serve a BLT sandwich. Now, I don't know if they do, or a Hasidic hospital run by devout Jewish people. You have to serve pork in your hospital because my dietary, I'm an Irish Catholic, I work there. You should have more dietary menus than I'm going to file a lawsuit. The reason this is, without these protections, Mr. Speaker, this becomes very pernicious. People undoubtedly, again, I bet my house on it, will sue to make a point and put these guys out of business, the totalitarian regime of political correctness.
Representative Fukumoto, would you yield your time?
Yes, I yield my time.
Thank you very much, Representative.
Thank you, Representative Fukumoto. I appreciate that. The totalitarian regime of political correctness will come crashing down on anyone who says, hey, I respect you, I love you, you're a good dude, good person, I don't want to participate. It's against my religion. Sorry, you got to do it. We've minimized, we are saying with this passage of this bill, the religious freedom, the religious liberty that we all cherish falls by the wayside. In fact, Mr. Speaker, the emerging minority in this country are people of faith. They are the minority now. They are the one we never take seriously. In fact, Mr. Speaker, judge after judge after judge has ruled so narrowly on the lower courts with regard to religious freedom, it always has to get kicked up to the United States Supreme Court, where they can't deny the reality of what the First Amendment says. It's pretty clear. A marriage counselor who doesn't want to provide counseling to same-sex couples, a therapist, hey, I'm not comfortable doing this. You're not going to get my best because my heart's not in it. Bang, lawsuit. You're going to go to court. And there are people who will test it because they want to shame the people of faith. You're archaic, you're knuckle draggers, you don't know what you're talking about, and we're going to put you out of business. Because we got the Hawaii Civil Rights Commission on our side, and we're going to hammer you and hammer you and hammer you. And if we don't spend you to death fighting the state with unlimited resources, we're going to smear you on the internet, we're going to picket your workplace if we can, and put you out of business. Don't believe me? Ask Mike Gabbard what happened to his sandwich shop back in the 90s, or his Whole Foods place. He had to sell it. People were picketing. He was making a good amount of money, Mr. Speaker. They would picket him. He couldn't sell any more sandwiches. He had to sell it. He lost his livelihood. Lost his livelihood. This is serious business. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative. Further discussion, members? Representative Jordan, followed by Representative Oshiro.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the good representative from EVA. As I spoke on Wednesday.
Representative Jordan, in support or in opposition of the floor amendment?
Support,
In
Mr.
support.
Speaker.
Please proceed in support.
I spoke on this on Wednesday. You know, I too remember that testifier, Mr. Rocco from the Waianae Coast, and he spoke very eloquently. In fact, we called him back up for continued discussion in the hearing. He basically said he was a pianist and he was a psychologist that practiced with couples. And he told us, yes, he's been called for ceremonies to play piano. And he has turned business away with, here's 3 other people you can ask. He understands the public accommodation law. We asked him that. And he spoke in opposition of SB1 for fear that he could be in violation. And he said, if SB1s, he could be. And I truly understood that he understood our bill and understood the public accommodation law. And this is what I was talking about on Wednesday. How do we allow people to have their own conscience based upon their freedom of religion? Now, when Mr. Rocco spoke before us, he didn't say he was just a practicing Catholic, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, living by that. He told us his family was ingrained in the Catholic Church for 400 years. How can I deny him? We have to respect that. I personally feel that our current SB1 HD1 draft does not address that. It was brought up in our hearing. We didn't have that discussion in our caucus on vetting our measure. And this is bringing up this discussion again. I clearly understand, and I'm not going to say we're rushing the procedures because everybody's telling me, no, you're wrong. When am I going to be right? The good representative from La EA said, what, 7 days we've been discussing this? 5 of those in long hearings? When are we going to discuss this? I don't think our public accommodation law can supersede our First Amendment right. Why don't we just put bright lines and define it right off the bat? Don't have individuals like Mr. Rocco come before us and say, I'm just going to close my business. When a question was posed to him in our hearings, well, Mr. Rocco, why don't you just put in your advertisement, you do traditional weddings? And he felt very uncomfortable doing that. I would never ask anybody to put something on their business card, their website, or in their window to say what they're going to service or not service. So how do we protect individuals and give other individuals rights? I haven't heard that question answered yet. And no, I'm not comfortable with our public accommodation law. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Oshiro.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I will be speaking against this floor amendment.
In opposition, please
Yeah,
proceed.
well, yeah, there's the same deficiencies that is in the previous draft regarding the really not the inauthentic or unrealistic protections for liability. Let me just speak a little bit about the direction this thing is headed. I'm looking at the language right here. It seems to be well placed along the lines of the representative from Waianae to a small business, which is 5 or fewer employees, or 5 or fewer housing units regarding housing. And this is very narrowly drafted in the context of providing goods or services that assist or promote the solemnization or celebration of any marriage or civil union, or provide counseling or other services that directly facilitate the perpetuation of any marriage or civil union. So it's both the creation of the civil union or marriage and the perpetuation or support of it. And the housing is similar, restricted just to those limited instances. But what I don't see here, and the reason why I object, is that if you're going to embark on some kind of policy like this, I think there needs to be some kind of a review into the bill itself, and that's what's missing here. I would suggest that this was to move forward. You would put maybe a 3-year sunset that was similar to what was put into House Bill number 6, where you had this kind of provision. I want to make sure people understand that what you're having here is a lack of clarity between both the liberty rights of individuals as well as the religious rights of individuals in the business place. And what Representative from Waianae spoke to is a very practical type of conundrum that we face, although it's inevitable if you look at the literature that's been published going back to 2008, same-sex marriages and the religious liberties. We know it's going to occur, and I think this is a good attempt to try and prevent that. If we can somehow get articulation or clarification on what tests will be used when you have both the religion interests under the Constitution and the sex interests or gender orientation issue, how that is going to be resolved. And I've been suggesting that we resort to the Schubert test, through the creation of a separate act to protect the religious rights and balance it against the due process equal protection concerns. And again, it would be determined by a bona fide, sincere religious beliefs. And that's helpful because it's not any willy-nilly kind of religion unto itself kind of creation, but what's bona fide and what's sincere religious beliefs. It also requires that the action be substantially burden the person's ability to act on that belief. And then the burden would shift again to the government to establish that there's a compelling state interest. And number 2, that it's a least restrictive or least burdensome manner. And the reason why it's relevant for us today is when I read the Hawaii Civil Rights Commission's October 17, 2013 response to inquiries, the executive director correctly articulates the law and the standards in place today. And he states this: the state of Hawaii has a compelling state interest in eliminating discrimination in public accommodations, period. Our public accommodations law is a law of general applicability that serves a compelling state interest. The concern I have there is that it seems to adopt, maybe by reference or by the choice of words, the test that came out of the Employment Division versus Smith, 494 U.S. 872 in 1990, which I spoke about, basically that if government has a compelling state reason, that's all it needs to go and supplant and trump any religious freedoms. And I have grave concerns over that. I've asked, and I hope they would consider, and we would consider, that we return to the prior Schubert-Werner line of cases where Justice Brennan wrote and suggested that we need to have a balancing of approaches when you have two important constitutional rights. Also, on a real practical note, Mr. Speaker, let's not forget that we're not just not talking about photographers or bakers or butchers or wedding planners or florists, but we're talking about a multitude of individuals and small businesses involved in the marriage ceremony today. This involves one's creative intellectual property, whether it's poetry or writing or publication or musicalization, lyricists. A whole gamut of people would fall under.
Mr. Speaker, I yield my time.
Thank you very much, Representative Awana.
Thank you, Representative from Nanakuli Ea. It seems to not be appreciated how far reaching it is. And it's a quite reasonable request. It's not going to be sanctioning any kind of things that would oppress people like me of Okinawan ancestry or me of Japanese ancestry. But really, it would provide some bright lines of understanding. And the idea behind it, and certainly there's no animus intended behind this proposal, but it's a very practical one, that over a period of 2 or 3 years, you will see, and we hope to see, a developing niche of businesses that will cater to, exclusively to, our gay brothers and sisters in the area of marital services or those kinds of events and activities. And I think that's the idea behind it. The last legislature to look at this was, I think it was the Minnesota legislature several years ago. And they went back and forth on this whole idea because they based it upon the past history of other states where you've had this conflict, and they wanted to avoid it. They didn't want to get into the situation in New Mexico right now that you have a photographer that was fined under their version of a Civil Rights Commission, and that may also prompt ultimately the higher appellate courts of the United States Supreme Court to even look at that case. But the whole idea behind that is to prevent, as much as possible, these foreseeable conflicts from arising. And finally, Mr. Speaker, I need to suggest this. This is in no way condoning any type of discrimination at all. What this does is it's a very practical approach to human nature and human custom, and as creatures of habit, we all have inclinations. So that's what it does. But it also provides an opportunity for us to do the right thing for our people, to avoid conflicts, and to address, Mr. Speaker, the fringe elements on both sides of this debate and discussion. Most people will not impose themselves upon the mom and pops. That's understood. It's the fringe elements that this proposal here seeks to address. It's a good attempt for my Republican counterparts, but for other deficiencies, I will have to vote against this floor amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion, Representative Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in strong opposition, and I'll be brief.
Opposition, please proceed.
Thank you. This bill, while purporting to protect the rights of small businesses, actually undermines the civil rights of everybody else. It would allow a business to put a sign in a window saying, essentially, no gays allowed. It codifies discrimination, which is something that we do not here in Hawaii especially condone. And I want to point out that no other state has taken a position like this. No other state has taken such an extraordinary step to open up this sort of law. And furthermore, under the underlying bill right now, nothing changes with the passage of marriage equality. Nothing changes from the perspective of a small business owner, because right now, discrimination based on sexual orientation is already prohibited by law. So with that, I thank you very much and ask to insert written comments.
Thank you. So ordered.
Mr. Speaker.
Representative Fale.
The previous speaker, you know, it would be great if his remarks were true.
Representative Fale, in support or in opposition of the floor amendment?
In support of the amendment, Mr. Speaker.
Please proceed
And I
in
sure
support.
wish I had the opportunity to share what he just said with my community. He says SB1, HD1 covers everything that we need. And that
Representative Fale, I don't think he said that. He was
okay.
he focused his comments
Okay,
on
says,
the amendment.
Oh,
The
okay.
amendment
He says
before
that
us.
the amendment will codify discrimination, and that we do need to make sure that we compel people to do certain things. Mr. Speaker, in this country, we've never forced people to support religious ceremonies, and marriage is one of those ceremonies. Never have. That would be forcing people to support a religious institution. Forcing businesses to support marriage ceremonies with which they fundamentally disagree is forcing them to support a religious ceremony, Mr. Speaker. That would be codifying discrimination. That would be something compelling of people to do that has never been allowed in this country before, Mr. Speaker. We have never forced people to support religious ceremonies, and we should never force businesses to support those religious ceremonies either, Mr. Speaker. And for those reasons, I believe that we are in a very good position to once again address this issue with this amendment and to not compel people to act against their conscience.
Thank you, Representative.
Mr.
Further
Speaker.
discussion,
Thank you, Mr.
Representative Saiki, followed by Representative Shiro.
I call for the question, but please allow the introducer to present his rebuttal. Thank you.
Before that, I'd like to recognize Representative Oshiro, second time, then we'll, Representative Marcus Oshiro, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Second time. I just noticed that the draft on page 22 does contain an
Mr.
important
Speaker, point
provision.
of order.
What's your point?
I did call for the question, but please permit the introducer to present rebuttal.
Recess.